I work at the Lonar coffee shop, just off the road from Carson City to Reno. And yes, the name has been changed for obvious reasons. I'll get to that later. You might wonder why I'm at this burger joint instead of pursuing some grand life plan. Well, let's just say things didn't go quite as expected. Working in a cafe, especially in the middle of nowhere, suggests that life isn't exactly going smoothly. So why Lonar specifically? You probably aren't actually asking, but I think it's worth explaining. Of all the burger joints around, what makes Lonar special is the pay. The wages here are amazing, about $50 an hour. Most places nearby barely offer minimum wage, but here, it's a different story. The reason? One person. My first day was pretty typical. I had previous customer service experience, so I adapted quickly to the quirks of the place. There were unwritten rules to follow. Certain areas needed to be spotless at all times, while others were more relaxed. Customers didn't want you to serve them too quickly. They needed time to wallow in their own thoughts. It was as if they were drawn here to feel isolated, despite the paradox. The rules extended to the kitchen staff as well. If you were some famous chef, you had to keep your skills to yourself. Your job was to make food that looked decent, but not overly impressive, just good enough to satisfy the clientele. As the weeks went by, I got the hang of it. Most customers were just looking for coffee and brunch at a comfortable pace. Then one day, curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to ask my manager why we made so much money. I didn't want to ruin anything good by questioning it, but I couldn't help myself. When I brought it up, she didn't even look up from the register as she counted bills. On your first day, you need to excel at following the rules. And when it comes to a major rule, you better be exceptional, she said flatly. High standards, huh? I replied, grimacing. No joke, she insisted. If you can't follow directions without question, maybe you should leave. No harm done, you'll still get a week's pay on your way out. The conversation stalled after that. I wanted to ask more, but she was clearly done with the topic. Fine, I thought. If she wanted me to keep my head down and just do the work, I could handle that. So I settled in, enjoying the casual chats with customers and the friendly coworkers. I had found a place to channel my frustrations and build something new. Then one Saturday, I noticed him, a man sitting in the far corner of the shop. I had no idea how long he'd been there, but he had this air of patience about him. He looked like he'd been waiting for a while, brown corduroy shirt, short hair, maybe in his mid-50s. Just an average guy with a calm smile. As I started to make my way toward him, I suddenly felt a firm grip on my arm. It was Melanie, my manager, her fingers tightening around my lower arm. Remember our talk about the rules? This is the main one, she said, her tone serious. Okay, I get it, I replied. Just keep your distance from that man, she warned, her grip still strong. She gestured toward the person who had caught my eye. He sat up straight, hands clasped gently, a sly grin on his face. You don't go near him, you don't make a sound around him, she ordered, gripping my arm tightly, as if her anger at something hidden was pouring through her hold. Just be smart enough not to ask questions and follow instructions. Don't go to his table, don't talk to him. Look if you must, shout across the room if you feel the urge, but don't approach, and don't take his order. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head with an intense glare. It was always the same, a rough reminder that dealing with him was off-limits. From the short distance I was allowed, I watched him. Unlike other customers, he didn't seem to be there to reflect or enjoy a quiet meal. Instead, he seemed simply curious, calm, and content. My shift ended soon after, so I missed the chance to see him leave, but the sight of him and the mystery surrounding his presence left a strange, dampening effect on my mood. In time, I noticed a rhythm to his visits, about once a month. During the rare moments I saw him, I tried to ask my manager questions like, who is he, or where does he come from? All were met with vague replies and a clear warning that I was welcome to quit if I felt uneasy. As fate would have it, my manager fell sick one day, right during the time he usually appeared. Without her watchful eye, my curiosity got the better of me, and I yelled across the room, "Hi, sir. What brings you here?" He turned, surprised, putting a hand to his ear as if he hadn't heard. "I'm sorry, could you come over and ask again?" he replied in a calm, measured voice that matched his appearance. I hesitated but didn't approach, redirecting my attention to the other guests. As always, he left without fanfare, leaving only whispers among a staff about his comings and goings. A week later, my manager invited me to a meeting in a back room. I sat at a table across from a sharply dressed man with an earpiece who eyed me with a cold gaze. "So, you had a visit from the wandering man last week," he stated, giving Melanie, my manager, a stern look. "Wandering man?" I asked, confused. The man sighed, explaining, "It's our term for the figure who sits quietly in the corner of this diner." The agent went on to say that the diner was part of a government operation and that this wandering man had been appearing in different places for years. Sometimes strange things happened following his visits, gruesome, inexplicable things. They hadn't apprehended him because it might not be safe. I left that meeting feeling unease, the cozy image of the diner now cracked. I began noticing more officers subtly stationed whenever he appeared, scribbling notes while he simply sat there, quietly watching. Melanie once mentioned how high the turnover rate was here, and it began to make sense. New employees either stayed, learning to accept the diner's strange terms, or they left, unable to reconcile their curiosity with the unsettling atmosphere. The kid was eager, a can-do kind of person. He flew through his list of tasks and was always ready for the next set, stepping in wherever he could, learning as much as possible. For someone his age, the pay was probably irresistible. Melanie and I did our best to get him to pace himself, handing down our well-practiced routine. The diner had its share of strange, unbreakable rules, things you just didn't question, rules as absolute as gravity. He nodded, and I really thought he was taking it all in. "If that doesn't work for you," I told him, "or if you don't think you can handle yourself here, you shouldn't be here." I had an instinctive knot in my stomach every time I saw the wandering man in the corner, especially that week when we were training the new staff. I could tell Melanie felt the same. On those days, we both worked the till, ready to stop any curious newbie with a simple hand on the arm if they got too close. One day, I saw Malcolm stepping out, trash bag in hand, and instinctively grabbed his arm, just like Melanie had done to me on my first day. He looked shocked. "Remember that little talk about rules?" I said. He nodded, almost looking guilty. I pointed to the man seated at the far table, staring ahead blankly, with seemingly no reason to be there. "You don't, for any reason, serve that man. Don't approach him, don't speak to him, pretend he doesn't exist." Malcolm, holding the trash bag, nodded and said, "Understood, ma'am." Then he went outside, down to the dumpster, a bit of a trek, but I appreciated his initiative so early on in his job. I turned back to observe the wandering man. There were several agents in the diner that day, scattered around. The man wasn't one to speak often, but today was an exception. "Officers," he called out, "if you have any questions, feel free to join me and ask." The agents around him chuckled, but he continued, "Truly, if you come sit with me, I'll tell you everything." More laughs, but no one took him up on it. "I know you're curious," he said. "I know you take notes. I know you discuss me. I know you built this place for me. I know you." It was the most I'd ever heard him say in one go. Then, the bell rang. Someone had entered. It was Malcolm, brushing off his hands as he came in through the diner's side door, which was just next to the wandering man's table. Everything happened so fast, yet I saw it unfold painfully slowly, as if I could have stopped it. The man paused his sentence, changing his expression to one of tired frustration. 30 visits, terrible service every time, he muttered, just as Malcolm walked by. Malcolm instinctively pulled out a notebook, ready to take down an order. "Hey, I got you, boss." "I can put some," he began, but then froze, caught in a trance as the wandering man's face morphed into a wide, Cheshire cat-like grin. His neck tilted, his eyes gleaming with what looked like excitement. He stood up, and then suddenly, both of them, the wandering man and Malcolm, vanished, as if they'd never been there at all. The chaos of that moment was interrupted by a bullhorn call, "Alert, level black." Wandering target has compromised the civilian. Repeat, civilian has been compromised. And that was that. Melanie quit days later. She wasn't angry at me. She told me she'd always planned to leave after the 10th disappearance, though I had no idea why she had set that milestone. From then on, all I could do was keep working, wishing on stars during my breaks that Malcolm might be brought back from wherever he'd been taken. The debriefing with the agents gave me no closure. Their answers were brief and empty. Where did he take him? I asked, to which they only replied, he's gone now. I was left with a sharp pain, an endless sense of dread. From then on, the rule was clear. The primary server wouldn't work alone whenever the wandering man visited. It was understood, though unspoken, that each mistake offered the agents some new insight. It felt like they had set up a kind of Darwinian arrangement, watching us as if we were part of a controlled experiment, a zoo for this strange entity to interact with. Finally, near the end of my shift one night, I saw him walk in again. The wandering man, ridiculously late this time, strolled up to the counter, stopping right in front of me. My heart raced. I was sure I was about to die. Don't worry. I have my own rules I follow, he said with a calm smile. I know you've been curious about me. I've noticed it ever since you first spoke to me. A cautious curiosity, hard to find in your kind. I was too terrified to respond, but he continued, I'll answer the question I know you want to ask. Why do I visit here? It's really simple. This little game, this act of mine, it's just so terribly fun. Please don't hurt me, I stammered, paralyzed with fear. He chuckled. Your planet is wonderful. I'll return soon, I promise. Maybe in a month, maybe 2. I'll bring a new game next time. He gave me a strange, genuine smile, and then he was gone. When I looked down, I saw a cake box sitting next to me on the counter. Maybe it had been there the whole time. Maybe it appeared just after he left. I opened the box and found Malcolm's severed head, placed on a bed of haphazardly arranged flowers, as if someone had tried to create a bouquet without fully understanding how. At the top of this horrific arrangement, in almost innocent handwriting, was a note that read, I brought him back, just like you wished. The worst thing about being stuck in this diner in the middle of nowhere is realizing there's truly nowhere else to run. Every inch of this planet lies under a sky full of stars, as open as the diner's door, ready for anyone or anything to wander in.